Amos, when you take a look at what's going on in the world, we have Iran, Russia, Venezuela, all exporting more oil under the Biden administration. Is it a fair assessment when you look at this landscape that you just want to see the oil flowing?
Well, Annmarie, first, thank you for having me here during a busy APEC. Look, when I was on the show just a couple of months ago at the end of September, most of the market was being quoted as saying prices were going to $100. There was no stopping it. Today we're at $81, $82 in Brent, and then WTI is in 77 or so. And I think what we've been trying to do, what President Biden's been trying to do, is to do two things at the same time that people didn't think we could, which is accelerate an energy transition and put more money into the system, more tax credits through the IRA, the CHIPS Act, and the Infrastructure Act, while at the same time ensuring that we have enough oil and gas on the market to sustain an economic growth. And that's what we've been trying to do. I don't think Venezuela has really grown in its exports. I think that it's been relatively steady and at a very low point from where it was. Today it's at about 750,000 barrels a day compared to maybe over 3 million just 20 years ago. So we've been trying to make sure that we can have a price that makes sense for the American consumer and around the world to support economic growth and reduce inflation. And I think that's been rather successful. Very difficult to do when you have a war in Russia and now a war in the Middle East.
Well, you just got back from the Middle East. You were in Lebanon, and your message there, according to the Arab press, was to make sure that this conflict does not spread, especially along with Hezbollah in the southern Lebanon border, northern Israeli border. How concerned are you after that trip to the Middle East that this will spread? Because also that's a key concern for the oil market as well.
Well, as you said, I went to Lebanon last week. From the beginning of the events in the Middle East, after the horrific terrorist attacks by Hamas on October 7, and the war started, we wanted to make sure it's contained there and does not become a Middle East war. And there's been a lot of exchange of fire between Israel and Lebanon, between Israel and Hezbollah, I should say, and the Palestinian terrorist groups that are based out of Lebanon. What we don't want to see is an expansion and a creation of a new front in the north that will inflame the region and carries with a lot of risk. I will tell you this, across the board in Lebanon, the people, the government do not want the war in Gaza to expand to Lebanon. And I think that what you're seeing in the markets actually is pricing in a success of the Biden administration policy of trying to contain it. Now, I'm not going to say that we've succeeded. We've succeeded so far. This is a dynamic situation. So, yeah, I took the extraordinary step to go to Lebanon just for a few hours to meet with everyone there and assure everyone that the United States does not want to see this expanding. That is our message to Hezbollah. That is our message to all players in the Middle East, not to expand this war and not to take advantage.
When it comes to Lebanese Hezbollah, when it comes to Hamas, they are backed financially by Iran. And what we've seen over the course of the past few months, especially in August, from outside analysts like Tanker Trackers, is that Iran is exporting much more oil under this administration. You ask the Treasury Department, they say they're enforcing sanctions. Is the U.S. actually enforcing sanctions, or are they turning a blind eye?
We are enforcing sanctions. You saw over the summer period a significant destocking or selling off of tankers on the water, not an increase in production as much as letting out some of what was in storage. I think those numbers have come down since then, the exports out of Iran. And I think the best antidote to revenues in Iran is keeping their exports at a lower level, but also to make sure prices are lower because we have that interplay between volume and value. And so what you're seeing the price today, Russia, as far as the price cap is concerned, and Iran and Venezuela, when the price comes down to roughly $80 from just 2 months ago it was at 95, and today it's at a much lower rate, that allows American consumers to have lower gasoline prices, and it allows us to make sure that some of these actors that you've mentioned around the world don't have as much revenue.
So it's lower oil prices, but at the expense of Russia still being able to, Putin still being able to make money. There's a lot of reporting that he is actually outside the price cap. Iran is selling so much more than they ever have been. 90% of that going to China. This summer, they were at nearly more than 2 million barrels a day of exports. Do you think that there needs to be a more concerted effort to go after individuals who are moving around the U.S. sanctions?
So let's just level set a little bit. Iran is not exporting more than they ever have. They exported over 2.5 million in 2012 before the sanctions hit, enforcement of sanctions during the Obama administration. It rose again after the JCPOA and now when the implication of sanctions. I don't think they reached 2 million barrels a day. They were exporting at somewhere in the elevated area above 1 million barrels, but not quite as much as 2. We are going to enforce the sanctions. Those numbers will come down, and we will do that in a manner that both allows the value and the volume for Iran to reduce. As far as the price cap, look, we set it at a certain price. It worked for several months. There's been a little bit of an increase in Russian sales, kind of dovetailing with the overall increase, massive increase in price of oil when it reached $95. That's come down, and with it, the discount between Urals, the Russian Urals, and Brent. So I think we're gonna go and take more measures on this.